In this video, I will show you how you can use the filtering and the segmentation options under the VBOUT automation builder. I will also explain how delays work and how you can use them in your workflows. So let's dive right into it. I've already built a very simple automation of a person filling out a form, sending an email, waiting a few days, and then checking if that email was open or not, and accordingly sending them a follow-up. A very basic workflow. Now, I want to differentiate two types of filters. There are the filters that are taking place on the arrows themselves, and I can just double click on that to see them. And I also have the filters taking place on the trigger side. These are the square objects on the screen, and there's a target segment here. So let's look a little bit at the target segment. If I choose that, and then here I have some criteria, I can choose match all or any rules. That means matching at least one of these rules if I have multiple, or matching all of them together at the same time. Okay. Now this drop down has a lot of options, but they're a little bit limited to the contact record themselves in terms of like the data that they filled out. When they first engaged with your brand, the first time they were seen and the last time they were seen. The status, if they have a tag on their profile. You can even dive into things like if they attended webinars, e-commerce behavior. And to make it easy for you, if I just simply type in my desired outcome here, like lifetime value. Oops. I can see that option show up. I can even dig into the list names that I have, because I have all the lists that I've created showing up as well. And within those lists, my custom fields that I've created. So this is where things start to fall into place in terms of what kind of fields have you created? Drop downs, radio buttons, date fields, birthday fields. And each one of these changes the behavior of the second drop down that you see here. Okay? Let me give you a couple of examples. If I am to choose, for instance, number of employees, this was created on VBOUT's form builder or field builder as a drop down, so my options are very easy, right? Now, if I choose a date field, date fields have so much more. I'm talking about full format date field, including the year, as well as there's a different type of date field, which is a birthday field. Now, how are they different? Date fields, in terms of full format, they have so much related to the year, versus the birthday field that only includes day and month. That's because birthday field can be repeated every year in terms of like birthday reminders and thank yous and anniversaries and stuff like that. Okay, so the full format date field has a lot of options, but it will execute and it will always check the year. So if, let's say, you've created an automation in 2020, this year it's not going to apply anymore, and you will have to update those values. Okay, so now just to kind of show you how things will play out, if I choose a full-on date field, for example, when would you like to start? I created this as a date field on the form, and now the second option here, I have two main categories. Fixed compare, this is comparing that custom date field to today's date, and I can do things like is after number of days before today, let's say 30. So this means that if I go back 30 days in time, 29 days, 28 days, so it's going to match any of these, and it's going to include them in this trigger. Okay, I can also do things like is after or is in between. If I do after, I can say is after number of days after today 30 days. That means all the way from today until the 29th and 30th. So choose your fields wisely, because it changes how things are dropped down. Now, there is an option which is an advanced option of a dynamic compare. This is when you compare two different custom fields to each other, but they both have to be dates. So let's say I have an expiration date and I have the last renewal date or something of that sort. I can literally just compare them to each other by clicking is, let me see here, is before number of days from, let's say 30 days. or typically reminders can be 3 days from, and then I can say expiry date. Okay. I'm just going to choose a random date field. A typical example of this is that when somebody has an expiration end date, and they also have a start date, and they can compare them to each other. All right. I can go on and on about this, but I highly recommend you explore what's available and also all the drop downs on this view as well. Now the other type of filter is the one on the arrow. If I double click on that, I'm going to see this type of filtering option. But this one includes a lot more engagement information beside the contact data. So everything that I saw on the join trigger is also included here, but I can also go to website engagement, landing page engagement, email activities, SMS, webinar attendance, UTM tracking. This one is pretty good because you can track people based on where they came from a UTM perspective. Okay. And if I click on field values, then I'll see all the options that I saw on the trigger. There will be some consolidation down the road between what you see here and you see on the trigger, but as of now, what you're seeing on the arrow is a lot more extensive than what you see on the trigger. Okay. And there applies here as well in terms of like matching any rules or matching all rules, and the type of field that you choose here will also dictate the drop downs you'll see next. For example, if I do a date field like date of birth, I'm going to have these options on the drop down. So these are in terms of filters. I just want you to note something really important. When you're doing this sort of process, add the filters after the delay, not before the delay, because the system executes the flow like this. Trigger, arrow, if nothing is here, moves on to email, immediately goes to the arrow. In this case, it branches out in two paths. And then the delay stays here until the delay is met, checks the arrow again for any rules, moves on to the final step. Okay. Often people make the mistake of adding the condition before the arrow, and that means that when you send an email, you don't have enough time to wait for them to open or not open. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to choose just a random email, which is called sample. I'm going to go back to the condition, and I'm going to add a rule here, which is unopened. Or let's do the path on top as if they did open the email. I'm going to send them another follow-up. Okay. Test onboarding. Sorry, I have to choose. You always have to look at this ending tag to kind of show you from this list what's an email that was sent as a newsletter and what is an email that was sent as an automation. So I'm using this sample one for now. I'll add this the same here as well, but this one has to be if they did not open it. And save. And let's work with the delay. So in this particular process, joining, sending an email, wait, check if they opened or they didn't in those two parallel roads here. I'm calling them roads or path, both of the same. And then you can send the email. Okay. Obviously, you would have to program each one of these assets, and I have a module specifically on that. Now, in terms of delays, if I double click on add delay, you're going to see here I have a specific time, and I have the delay by day, hours, and minutes. Because I chose the time, hour and minute doesn't apply anymore. The time, specific time, takes precedence. If I remove it, I'll be able to say, okay, 5 hours later or a few days later. If you're sending out emails, I highly recommend giving them 2 to 3 days so they could act on that first campaign that you've sent, and you're not really pushing, too much on an inbox. I try to also do things like 8:05 or 8:07 to make it random. You can execute only on specific days. If you happen to choose Monday and Tuesday and somebody is matching that automation throughout the other days, it's not going to apply. And if for some reason you don't want people to get emails and be held up for next day, if they're out of range, this probably works really good if you have some SMS messaging or a certain type of action that would only take place between, let's say, 7 a.m. And this is completely random, by the way. And I don't know, 8 p.m. And the way this works, if someone between 7 and 8 gets to this point, after 3 days, of course, they will continue. But if they happen to meet this at 8:05, the system will hold them in this stage until next day 7 a.m. and they will resume. So nothing will be lost if you follow this format. Obviously, I have to do the exact same on the bottom to do 3 days delay and 3 days delay here. Now, one option here is called use specific date. This one comes handy if you have events that are upcoming, and for example, and you'll notice now how this changes the format. If I know that my event is on the 25th, or let's say 26th, and I'm sending a day before reminder, then I'll do this. And I can continue building out the automation. Add another delay, and now I'll do specific date, and I'll do it on the day of the event. And it's really important to understand the difference between a date specific date delay and non-specific, because not specific, it's always there. It doesn't matter if the person comes on Monday, Tuesday this year or next, it's always going to follow the delay. But a specific day will only execute on the 26th, and that's it. After that, probably this delay will come useless and you would have to shut it off. We use this a lot in webinars and event reminders, but most automations usually include this sort of format.